Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're having a look at the J-10A. This is the namesake of the update, Dance of Dragons, and it's looking pretty good, but I've also got to mention there's no way this thing is finished. It's miles off where it should be in terms of flight performance and also just other factors. It's very hard to believe that this vehicle is ready to go in its specific state. So just take that with kind of a grain of salt, or take everything you see with a grain of salt, because I honestly think the only thing that's working on this thing are the missiles, because they're already in the game with the PL-12 and the PL-8. So the J-10A is a new fighter that is coming in for the Chinese. It's going to be after the F-16A, surprisingly, instead of between these. Mainly probably because they want to balance out the lines, and also we're kind of not really doing anything with this, I suppose. So it's coming in at 13.7, which is the highest BR in the game. It is a lot lower in ground, at 12.3, so at least it can be used in ground. But the vehicle itself is very much just an air superiority fighter with a few very small additions. It has the Pratt & Whitney F100 PW220. I feel like that's probably the wrong engine on it, but we'll see what goes on. I'll be very surprised if that's what it's supposed to use. The actual pilot has access to a bunch of different stuff, including the standard head-mounted display. Also has an IRST on it, and a pretty decent RWR, plus the radar, which is there too. The radar being the Type 1473, you can see it has a lot of different modes on it, which will help it out. The main one being TWS, of course, which is going to be very useful for the PL-12 missiles, which are one of the main missiles of this vehicle. It also has a Type 23-3 cannon, not a great cannon. It only has 200 rounds, but at the same time, it'll do what it needs to do. It's not something which is going to be used as the main armament. It's just there for a backup, just in case something goes wrong. The vehicle is beautifully modeled. It looks really nice, and obviously has like the little fins on the front, and from the back looks kind of awkward because of the weird angles, especially with the fuselage. You can see it kind of like has a ridge in it, and then also back here you have just a weird setup, but the model itself is really cool. Hopefully that won't change too much, especially kind of going forward. The air intake is huge as well, but I suppose that's what's needed for an engine like this. So looking at the different stuff that this has access to, surprisingly, it does have a thermal pod, which is not something I thought it would have, but it also doesn't have a Morse system, and does start off with stock PL-5Es and also PL-12s. So PL-5Es, the E2s, which are right here, these are all-aspect missiles. They actually have pretty good stats on them, pretty similar to the PL-5B right now, apart from it's obviously all-aspect. And then you have the PL-12, which is the active radar homing missile, which this will get access to. Now, of course, when it comes to these missiles, everything may change, so take, once again, everything with a grain of salt, but these are the standard stats in the game for the PL-12. There is usually more stats which are hidden in the files, which we'll talk about at a later date when this vehicle is a bit more complete. The major missile you have on this thing, though, is the PL-8 4AR. It is an all-aspect missile. The only difference between this one and many of the other ones you'll find at this BR, it doesn't have IRCCM. So this one is very fast, has an incredibly good overload. It's very much a dogfighting missile, meaning get close to the enemy and do a lot of damage to them. But the fact that it's quite easily to flare, or quite easy to flare, people don't like it as much as stuff like the AIM-9M, for example, or the R-73. So you can bring 4 of these, and then 4 of the PL-12s with each other, or you can bring 6 of the PL-12s, and then 2 of the PL-8s for dogfighting. So if you want a longer range engagement, you're able to do it. For me, I would probably take this loadout here, which is, 4 of each, which makes the most sense. And then you do actually have access to ground ordnance. Understand, though, this thing's main ability is not ground ordnance. It is definitely much better at doing the air-to-air fighting, which is where it should be used mostly. So it has 250s, has 500s, and then also has guided bombs with the thermal pod, the KADC-03A, and that means that this vehicle will be great at ground pounding in the, well, not ground pounding, but basically in ground realistic. It will have a use. You know, the fact it can go very high, it should be able to use its engine and countermeasures to get there, and then afterwards it will be able to drop these huge guided bombs on things and be able to hit them from miles away. So it'll have 2 guaranteed kills if used correctly, and then all the other ordnance options on it aren't very good. So there's not really much point in those. You won't be able to get close enough to the battlefield to use them. But these guys, definitely, you'll be able to do quite a lot with them. But the main reason you play this is for its air-to-air capabilities, not its kind of ground pounding capabilities at all. This, if you are looking for a vehicle which will be like good in ground, this is not it. This is very much an air arcade, realistic, and simulator plane which you can have a bit of fun with. So the other interesting thing about this vehicle is the fact that its countermeasures are not set up correctly right now. Instead, what you actually have is something which is not right. I don't know if they're trying a new system with it when it comes to like packs of flares or packs of countermeasures, but at the moment it isn't showing the right amount. You can see there, you know, it has the 52 countermeasures, but when you try and change it, it actually has a lot less. And the overall flight model of this thing just doesn't feel right. You can see here, by the way, with the radar, it has Search PD, you have the TWS, you also have the PDHDN, and that's your 3 modes that you have. The maximum range that you can use these things at, so PD is 90, TWS is also 90, or basically 80 kilometers it looks like, and that's the same for all of these things, so not too shabby. Obviously the TWS is going to be the main one, I feel like, once you're using, you know, not the PL8s, but the PL12s that are sat here, the big ranged missiles that look very similar to the M120 right now. Which is interesting. So yeah, the cool thing about this is it does have its cockpit fully modeled and also head-mounted display. So this will be useful in sim and also other areas. The vehicle's cockpit is beautiful. It has a lot of really cool features to it, and also at the same time everything is movable for the pilot. He does actually move around the stick. The screens are really cool. You have obviously the RWR and the radar on the side, and it has a digital HUD too, which I'm sure you'll be able to change if you want to, so that's actually really nice as well. Usually this is the part of it which isn't ready to go, so you have the cannon on ground target and the standard sight. That's the only 2 sights that you have with this. That kind of sucks, but apart from that, you know, it does look really nice. The vehicle, I'm hoping, will get its flight model changed though. Right now it has a pretty good sustained turn and is able to push itself around pretty well. It does have, you know, a good radar for the missiles too, but the way that I see this, you know, being more useful is obviously in the dogfighting role. I know that the dogfighting setup isn't really a huge thing right now at the high tiers of air, but once people get used to how to dodge the active radar homing missiles more, what will end up happening is everybody will use their actives, and then, you know, you can go in and go a bit tango. Right now there isn't really a lot of strategy around it, at least from what I've seen. Instead it's just people running around and just doing silly things. So I feel like with a vehicle like this, it's not really going to feel itself until people get a handle on how to properly, not just, you know, fight from a long distance point of view, but also from other points of view too. Hopefully we see more of these in the game. Hopefully we see the other J-10s. Hopefully we see more vehicles that are similar to it. But as the namesake of this update, I think it's kind of cool to see, and hopefully people enjoy it going around. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time.
I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Aussie Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.